We've got affirmative action, one of my favorite topics. In just a minute, we're going to have Huey Newsome. It's a real treat. We're going to have him live in studio, member of the National Advisory Project 21 Black Leadership Network. We've had him on many times, and finally we have him live here. Can you believe it? We are blessed today. Well, we're going to be talking about this Michigan affirmative action case, and you see how crazy a lot of this is. I mean, I have trouble believing we're even using the words affirmative action, or the society even takes a concept like this seriously in a day and age when you have a black president. If you have a black president, or any minority president, or for that matter, a woman president, and we're still kicking around the idea of affirmative action, what more glass ceilings could there be when the president of the United States is African American? Well, what you see, and we'll see if Huey agrees with me, but what you see is that people cling to these ideas because they earn their political and economic and social and TV living from them. Al Sharpton can't have this go away. He might lose his television show. He loses his money. Al, does anybody here think, in our listening audience, do you think that Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson wanted Barack Obama to be president? No, no, no. They need a conservative. They need a Republican. So they have somebody to criticize. They have to have something to shoot at. They need people to condemn. They have to have their thing going. They got to keep up the vigil. They don't want to help African Americans or anybody else. They want to earn a living. Huey Newsome, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Well, talk to me about this Michigan case, because I want to get that. You heard my general take on affirmative action. Let's talk about this Michigan thing, because we got more craziness going on here.
Well, just a little bit of history. You know, back in 2003, the Supreme Court had ruled, as far as university admissions are concerned, ruled that the university was allowed to have a very narrow admissions policy based on race for the law school, in the law school decision. But the general admission policy of the entire university, which actually gave points to minorities above and beyond anyone else during the admissions process, was completely struck down. The people of the state of Michigan then in 2006 voted on what's called Prop 2, which banned racial preferences in admissions policy, as well as government contracting, et cetera, in 2006. And so this one, the Schuett versus the Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, all came about from that, because they sued in federal court in order to have the ability to continue affirmative action. Then a federal court in Cincinnati voted 8-7 to support the Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, which effectively struck down the ballot initiative in which the people of the state of Michigan had actually voted for.
I got it.
So now we're at a point where the Supreme Court, surprisingly by some, actually decided to hear this case, in which the Attorney General had asked the Supreme Court, hey, you know, we voted for Prop 2 is a ballot initiative duly decided by the people of the state of Michigan, and we feel that it should be instated, and we feel that racial preference should not be a part of admissions in the University of Michigan, or college, or in higher education for that matter. Here's the funny thing.
Thank God you're here. This is more complicated than gay marriage. Legally, my goodness.
And when you talk about the Texas case, which is also going to be heard this year, where a Caucasian woman by the name of Fisher is suing the University of Texas as well. The Supreme Court will hear that as well. She's suing because she was denied admission to university.
I know that case. Yeah, that's gotten a lot of media play.
Right.
Okay, so this Michigan thing, then the legal issue is if they let the ballot initiative stand. I guess the first thing is, does this stand? If the Supreme Court says that it stands, does that mean that it will trump? Does it trump then the Michigan Law School's affirmative action, and then their affirmative action is out because that's a school in Michigan?
The way I understand it, Prop 2 itself trumps the law school admission policy, because Prop 2 mandated that racial preference is not allowed. Before that, there was no such ballot initiative in place, so the University of Michigan was allowed to continue to consider racial preference.
Now, I wonder if, my fear there is, will the Supreme Court rule, they'll say, well, it could trump, but it has to go to the state Supreme Court to rule on their own law. Is that what they're going to do? That's some kind of nonsense there.
I would be surprised. Everything I'm hearing is I'd be surprised if they go against Prop 2 in the first place, which bans racial preferences. The reason I say that is because First of all, we just had the decision on Obamacare. Unfortunately, it did not come out in our favor, right? But one thing that you saw from Roberts,
he betrayed us. That's what you saw.
But other than the fact that he betrayed us, he also showed his preference for the legislative process, right? So in his opinion,
that's a good point.
In his opinion, he said, I don't feel that it is, even though this law, he went above and beyond to show his concern with Obamacare, but he did say that if you're going to strike it down, it should be struck down through the legislative process. Everything I'm reading kind of shows that the Supreme Court will reinstate or support Prop 2 because, once again, that is a ballot initiative chosen by the people of the state of Michigan. Otherwise, you are basically mandating that the state supports racial
preferences. Let me ask you this now. Let's say they okay, doing a great job explaining this. Even I can understand it. Let's say they reinstate Prop 2.
Yeah.
But they say we're going to reinstate it, but on the question of whether Prop 2 trumps the University of Michigan Law School affirmative action policy, we're going to give that to the state Supreme Court. Could that happen?
That could happen. That could definitely happen. I'm kind of leery of that one because the reason that I say that is because I don't think that the court came back in 2003 in the law school case and said that there is a mandate to consider race. They said that in lieu of the ballot initiative, which passed 3 years later, in lieu of that ballot initiative, the university is allowed, but there was no mandate to consider race.
I got it. So
but then once Prop 2 is instated,
I got it.
A ballot initiative, people of the state of Michigan said we are banning that.
Okay,
once
so
that's put in
you're
place.
Optimistic now. You're an optimist. You think this whole thing, in other words, you think at the end of the day the court will rule such that the Michigan Law School affirmative action policy is struck down.
Absolutely.
So you're an optimist. Boy, thank God, from your lips to God's ears. So now, if that happens, could you see a tidal wave? I mean, if Michigan is struck down, what's that going to do to the Ivies? Are they going to get entrenched even more? What's going to happen here?
That's an interesting question. The Ivies become a little bit of a problem, if you will, because now you're talking about a private institution versus a public institution.
And Michigan's number 2 or 3 in the country. Mm-hmm. That's, for those of you who don't, everybody knows Harvard and Yale, but Michigan, I mean, the overall school is not in that league, but the law school is 2 or 3 in the country.
Absolutely.
Always has been there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's the crown jewel of the university there. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Why do these people, tell me why are these schools, like why does an elite law school cling to this? Why do they, it just seems like at this point, you've got an African-American president. I don't really think there are too many glass ceilings in this society. I don't really think they think there are too many glass ceilings in the society. Why are their heels dug in and they're screeching on the desk with this? What is the battle here?
I think it's a matter of political correctness, and it's also politics at play. You tend to have, you talked a little bit about the race baiters and that group of people. So you have this political correctness. You have a desire to appease those people. The last thing you want to do is upset them and have people marching all around the University of Michigan Law School. So it's much easier to ally with them proactively in order to avoid such negative press.
Maybe it's just, to be even more cynical, maybe it's just that affirmative action is such a big part of the left and its political mobilization in the country that raising money and mobilizing in politics, if they lose that issue, they lose a big part of what it means to be a leftist.
You make a great point. If you think about the voter ID laws, right? I had nothing to offer the African American community as a Democrat Party, right? So what do? I promise you the right to vote. You've already got the right to vote. You had it for 50 years. But I've given you the right to vote to compel you to come protect it by voting for me.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I don't have to give you
That's
anything.
fascinating.
I don't have to make any political sacrifices, but hey, come vote. Vote for me and I'll support it.
It's just so messed up. I mean, I feel so sorry for the average black person, the average minority in this country, because their leadership doesn't represent them. Their leadership, I mean, to an extent, all leadership usurps the base, the unions, et cetera, all people. But the minorities are particularly, they're just particularly raped by their leadership. They're screwed. Mm-hmm. Their leadership exploits them, and it's been this way for so long. Yep. It's a shame. I just feel terrible. You just have to feel terrible. You have to feel sorry for people when you look at this.
You do, and I'm quite frustrated with it, because we need to have, in the African American community, we need to have an agenda Forget about parties and all that. Let's talk about specifically what it is that's going to get us out of the situation we are, closing the gap, if you will, with the rest of America in terms of wealth.
Al
education.
Sharpton won't help anybody get out of anywhere. He wants them back pushed. Al Sharpton's trying to push them back.
There's no. I mean, if we are at parity with the rest of the country, there's no racist accusations that you can hurl at Republicans.
Huey Newsome, thank you so much. What a pleasure. What a pleasure. What a legal scholar. I don't think anybody could have explained that case the way you did. I finally understand it. Thank you, Huey. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.